Alright.
Alright, we'll get into that later. My name is Adrian Redondo, and today I'm going to teach you guys about the history of prosthetics. Now, before I begin with prosthetics and its purpose, I want to talk to you about why people have prosthetics and why it was a thing back then, and why it is still now. So basically, everybody has a pair of arms and legs, and whenever someone loses a body part, it doesn't have to be necessarily an arm or a leg. It can be any body part, really, like even a jaw, teeth, fingers, and whatnot. And in order to get a new part, you have to replace it. And it may not be as good as the biological part, but it works. It looks like an actual body part. So people throughout history, have developed different concepts of a prosthetic part, and through them came a lot of advancements that I'll be discussing today. And to show that I have some understanding of the concept, I researched the subject for a little over a few months, because this is the field that I'm hoping to study in. So I look up different articles about all these different concepts, like this toe over here, and then a few others that I'll get into later. And the reason why, like I said, prosthetics are important are because they are things that people need eventually when you either lose a body part, say that you lost a job because of an injury or a disease. Then in order to replace it, you have to go to a prosthesis or a doctor that can take you to a place where you can get a replacement. And the materials may not be exactly like the real part itself, but it looks like it, and it functions a little bit like what the original part was. And the history itself is kind of long. It actually dates back very long from ancient Egypt. This is a mummy from a long time ago, and I'll get into that in a second. Alright, so before I go into the history, let's talk a little bit about what a prosthesis actually is. Like I said before, there are artificial parts that are made to resemble that of the original ones. And they can be made from all sorts of materials, like this one is made from leather and wood. But others, like nowadays, are made from plastic, metal, and all sorts of materials. And now we're starting with the history. So basically this is a prosthetic toe. It's to resemble the big toe of the original foot. As you can see here, the actual foot, you can tell which one's a prosthetic toe. As you can see, it looks like the normal toe itself, while the rest decayed. So it has like some durability to it if it's lasted this long. And from an article that I found on Discovery.com by, I believe it was Lorenzi. By Lorenzi, she estimated that there were 2 of these, and they were found on one mummy. And apparently he lost both of these big toes, and he had them replaced and mummified with them. So you can't see it, but there will be one for the left foot and one for the right foot. And this proves that this was relevant back then, that people had the idea of replacing their body parts when they lost them. Of course, this isn't too severe because a toe is not as important as an arm or a leg or even a heart. But this is the start of something. Now, skip 1,000 years, and we get to a new kind of prosthetic part. There's this one French surgeon who decided to kind of revolutionize the way that prosthetics were made. He was a scientist and an engineer, but also a doctor. Serving as a surgeon, he created all sorts of parts for the king's court. And he was a surgeon for 4 kings because he was very useful for replacing body parts for soldiers who would lose their arms or legs in battle. And his most greatest achievement by far is this book that he published in 1579 that describes every single blueprint of every prosthesis he's ever made. His most famous being the Le Petit Lorraine. As you can see here, this looks very intricate for what they would make from 1500s. Now, I'm not so sure if this worked, but as you can see here, he has all sorts of different gadgetry going on. He has levers and switches going on. And the purpose apparently was that it would, if you move a certain way with your hand, it would function like the actual hand. And I'm not sure what exactly happened to the hand, but this is apparently his most famous invention among all the things in his book. But yeah, so basically this is one of the more recent, compared to the Egyptians. There wasn't much work done with prosthesis back then in the Roman times. There wasn't much use for them. But since there was more advanced technology coming around in 1200s, they were beginning to do more and more things. There was room for improvement, and this surgeon, by the way, his name is Ambroise Paré. He was one of the first to start evolutionizing this and gave some new ideas for years to come. Alright. And another thing that happened is that recently, and I'll go into this in a little bit, is that in the last 100 years, there has been this huge improvement with prosthesis. And the point that comes across, like why this has been improving for so long, is because the technology has been boosted up considerably. And this all started after World War II. There was a journal article that I saw, and in it, the journalist Ed Ayapa, he said that the technology specifically started after post-World War II. Like the second it stopped, the Americans began to start revolutionizing prosthesis by putting all their focus onto creating more intricate and more useful parts. And it's centered around California. So that will be around where we will get most of our new creations. Alright, and to get into this, okay, thank you. To get into this, this is basically the brief timeline of the recent 100 years. This isn't entirely accurate, but it's enough to estimate how far we've come. And if you can see from this year, 1946, this is literally like right after World War II that we start seeing this like massive jump. And we only really see an actual jump in the technology at around the 1990s. And that's because we were studying and still trying to figure out how to put these different like functions into an arm, because it's hard to mimic biological body parts. So for the most part, we were just trying to design like the aesthetics behind the arm to make it look like an actual arm. So yeah, we were starting to improve them. So right now, like it says, it's just mostly like aesthetics. They were just made to resemble a human arm rather than function like one. Now, we skip, again, the jump kind of happens at around the 1990s that we see this like steady improvement. So like we wouldn't really see much of it here, but now that we see that there's actually functionality within the arm, we can see here that when we reach to 1990s, we can see that now this arm has an actual function. You can actually use this arm for actual grasping. But this isn't like aesthetically pleasing. We had to get rid of it for the function of it, because we were starting to figure out how it works. And now we skip to 10 years, and in here we can see that the arm is getting close to looking like a human arm. It still looks a bit strange. It's kind of odd, but it looks like it's functioning a little bit. It's very hard to control them too, because we still haven't figured out how to give sensory feedback to the wearer. So for the most part, they can still only do as much as these arms can. They're only made just to grasp a little bit. And finally, here we are. This is around what we have. Of course, we have more advanced prosthesis nowadays, but here gives an example of how far we've come. So in these, we actually have been able to give fine motor control, which means that we're able to have arms that move almost like an actual arm. And you can see the fingers are holding on to that dice. It's very precise. And also, the interesting thing is that now we've finally been able to give the user sensory feedback. They can actually feel what they're touching. And it may not be exactly correct to what a normal person would get, but it's enough to make it a working arm in general. Okay, and alright, so today I told you all what a prosthetic is, some of the earlier concepts from ancient times, from 3000 BC all the way up to 1500s, and now I've told you about the recent development in the prosthetic industry from 1946 all the way to the 2000s. And yeah, so the whole point of this is that eventually you're gonna have to look into this, because one day you might need a prosthetic arm or leg, because in case you might lose one, you'll at least know what you'll be looking for and what they are. So yeah, thank you and have a good day.